Shri Ramesh Ranganathan, Acting Chief Justice of the High Court of Judicature at Hyderabad and the Chancellor of Nalsar, Professor Faizan Mustafa, the Vice Chancellor of this very prestigious university, my esteemed brother judges, Justices Kadri and Justice P.V. Reddy, former judges of the Supreme Court of India, judges of the High Court of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, present and former, esteemed members of the governing bodies of the university, eminent faculty, distinguished guests, parents, graduating students, ladies and gentlemen. I have with me a written speech because it is conventional that you must read from a written speech when you are addressing a convocation. But having seen the atmosphere here and having enjoyed the feeling of thrill and the excitement among those of you who are passing out and getting their degrees, I feel I can safely depart from the tradition of reading out a written speech and speak to you about how I feel about legal education and the legal system that we have in this country. There were times, as you remember, and maybe your parents will tell you, when law was not a very, very popular profession, not a very popular course of study. People used to get admitted to a law college only if they could not secure admission to any other course, including maybe Hindi or Department of Hindi or some other Urdu or some other course which was the least in demand at that time. The reason was obvious, because legal profession was never considered to be very rewarding. Legal profession was considered to be a lifelong struggle, and people who are already tired of books would be very, very reluctant to get immersed in a library or study continuously, unending, indefinitely for the entire life. But things have, over the past few decades, diametrically changed, substantially changed. Today, law is one of the most sought after, most prestigious courses which the universities are offering. Today, legal profession is attracting the best of the talent from all over the country. Today, successful lawyers are making more money than any other professional can in any other field of human activity. Today, a lawyer's importance in the legal system has grown manifold. And today, we have several challenges also that we face in the judiciary and in even other fields where lawyers play a very significant role. Faizan Saab recited a couplet from Allama Iqbal's famous poem. I don't know how many of you understand Urdu and how many of you really understood the beauty of that couplet. If I am not mistaken, the couplet is something like this. नशे में नहीं तेरा कसर शाही के गुंबद पर. कसर means महल. Royal महल जो है, at the royal palace, your ashiana or your nest is not on the dome of the royal palace. नशे में नहीं तेरा कसर शाही के गुंबद पर, तू शाही है, बसेरा कर पहाड़ों की चट्टानों पर. He is addressing the Shahbaz as the falcon, the eagle. He says you are not supposed to be resting on the dome of a royal palace. You are the eagle, you are supposed to be making a resting or a nesting in a mountain or on a rock. The importance of this couplet, as Professor Saab mentioned to you, is that you don't have to go and land in a multinational law company's plush office. You are supposed to prepare yourself for a greater fight, for a more principled fight, for a greater challenge that lies ahead of you. It's very easy to get a job in a multinational company, sit in a plush legal office, draft a few opinions or make some pleadings, send a bill to the multinational company, maybe in US or some other continent, get a hefty monthly emolument and be happy. But that is not, I think, what you are being prepared for. I think this university prepares you for a greater challenge. And that is exactly what Professor Faizan Mustafa, your Vice Chancellor, wanted to tell you when he said, when he recited Allama Iqbal's this couplet. But I was reminded of another couplet. And that is, आज़ादी की रूह जब बेदार होती है नौजवानों में, as you are all very young and one gets the feeling that आपके अंदर, from within you are now getting kind of liberated from the shackles of study and all. आज़ादी की रूह जब बेदार होती है नौजवानों में, तो नजर आती है उनको अपनी मंजिल आसमानों में. Today, when I look at you, and I am conscious of it, very acutely conscious of the fact that you are the best that this country has to offer to legal profession. You have secured admission to Nalsar on the basis of a very, very tough competitive examination, in which lakhs of students appear. It is ultimately a few, maybe 100 or 150 students who make it here. So in terms of intellect and potential, you are the best. Now, if you are the best, you have obviously the best of choice, the best of options that anyone in your position can have. You can go, as Professor Saab mentioned, to a multinational corporate house, work there. That is one option, which neither I nor Professor Saab would maybe, ask you to do. Or you have the option of joining the legal profession as such. And such a few as are willing to join the judiciary, you have that option also. The difference between the life of a person sitting in a cubicle and the life of a person or the career of a person who is fighting in litigation in the courts is in the sense of satisfaction or excitement, which one gives and the other does not. If you want a placid life, an uneventful life, a life which doesn't really bring you in close touch with human conduct, human behavior, human nature, and human affairs, you can as well comfortably go to a law firm or a law company and spend your time there, be rewarded monetarily, make a good fortune, lead a very, very happy life. But if you want to be a part of the process which eventually leads to justice, you have to be either at the bar or in the judiciary. I think the excitement about this profession, which is attracting so much talent today, is not because it is monetarily rewarding. Maybe some of you come from a business background. You may have some parental business where you can conveniently go and make a lot of money. Maybe some of you may like to start a business. It is not the money that I think eventually attracts. I remember years ago, Nani Palkiwala, the great lawyer, was invited to Kashmir in connection with some constitutional issue which the Chief Minister had and on which he wanted his advice. In the evening, he was invited for dinner at our house. My father was a minister at that time in Kashmir government, and there were a few others also. So someone asked Nani Palkiwala, "Sir, you are such an eminent lawyer. You have been such a great lawyer. No one has matched your competence. You have done so much. You must be a very rich man also." I cannot forget the words of Nani Palkiwala when he answered that question. He said, "Do you know that God has shown his contempt for money by choosing the recipients?" He said, when I fought bank nationalization case, I was looking for somebody who would sign a wakalatnama. I did not argue that matter because of money or because of any monetary reward. I argued that matter because of the issues that it raised, because I was passionate about the issues that it raised. He said, "I have long since given up legal practice for a livelihood. I don't need to argue or appear in cases because I want a livelihood, a source of livelihood. My life is dedicated to this profession because I pursue a much higher and a more subtle and a more satisfying ambition, and that is to uphold the constitutional values in this country. So I feel it is not the money or the rewards or the spoils of the profession that you should be looking for, but it is a much higher value you should be looking for. And that is what you find in the legal profession. It is the satisfaction of having thought of a point. You are excited, you have got a degree, you are excited, a chapter in your life has come to an end, you are excited that you are going to be a lawyer or maybe a judge tomorrow. But I can assure you that when you become a lawyer, the satisfaction will come not from the fact that a client has really paid you handsomely for the work that you are doing. The satisfaction you will draw, and not just for a while, the satisfaction you will draw for the rest of your life will be that you thought of a point, that you worked on that point, that you did research on that point, and that you could eventually win a case for your client because you had thought of that point, because you made that point so beautifully, because you argued that point so beautifully, or because a judge who heard you and who decided the case complimented for your brilliance or the hard work that you had done. That is the satisfaction. And the satisfaction will be that you are a part of the process in the adjudication of disputes and in the administration of justice, that you are a part of that process which eventually led to administration of justice. That is the satisfaction. And that is what I think is not a satisfaction that is momentary. Of course, it's very exciting when you win a case in a court. But I can tell you today, when I look back, I practiced for 22 years and I have been a judge now for 23 years. I've spent almost 45 years in this profession. But if you ask me whether I remember a case because of the fee that I earned in that case, I would say no. It didn't really matter which client gave you how much money, did he pay you more or less. At times, you see, you fix a fee with a client, he will never pay you more than what you have demanded. You will always be content with what he has paid you or even less than what he has, you see, agreed to pay you. But if you ask me, what do you remember out of your legal professional days, I would tell you, yes, I remember a case in which I raised this point and the court eventually decided in my favor. And that is, I think, a much greater and a more lasting sense of satisfaction that you people will have. Leave aside individual issues. Each one of you may have your own outlook, your own compulsions. Some of you may have even borrowed money from a bank. You may be required to go and maybe find a job where you can repay the loan. Some of you may be wanting to go overseas to get higher degrees in legal education. Some of you may be wanting to go to Oxford, to Cambridge, to Harvard. Some of you may like to become teachers also. A very noble profession. I wish we could draw at least 10% out of this brilliance to the teaching profession. Today, we are looking to the West for higher education in law. There were times when I said only third divisioners, the people who would get admitted nowhere, used to come to law colleges. You have today 17 or 19 law universities in which you attract the best of the talent. But where does this talent go after LLB or LLM? It looks to the West for higher education, for better education, or maybe for quality education. Why do you look to the West? Why? Because we do not have those centers of excellence in our own country. We have not been able to build them here. And why have we not been able to build them here? Because we do not have that caliber or that will to build teaching profession as a profession that will attract the best of talent. So I wish, out of this brilliance that I see here or elsewhere in other national law schools, at least 10% would get attracted to the teaching profession. We wouldn't have to go to Harvard then. We wouldn't look to Yale or, for that matter, Oxford or Cambridge. We would have our own institutes of excellence. We would have people who would guide and maybe attract talent from other countries, other nations. Why should people overfly India to go to West in search of legal education? Why can't they land in India to have the best of education which the West is offering? Our challenge, one of the challenges I would say that the legal profession today faces, or the quality legal education faces, is of building credible institutes of higher learning in law in this country. That is one challenge. Some of you may go and maybe meet that challenge, maybe help us in building such institutions. And I'm sure with distinguished professors like Professor Ranbir Singh, Professor Faizan Mustafa, Professor Madhav Menon, Professor Mohan Gopal, and a host of others, we have the capacity to build those institutions. I'm working on that. I've told Professor Faizan Mustafa we will have a Vice Chancellor's conference where we will look to the next step or the next level of legal education in this country. I'm sure some of you may be attracted to that also. But leave aside that. Look at the state of affairs in our judiciary. Look at the challenges that we face in the judiciary today. I've been saying this for a long time now, and you may have read in the newspapers. It has become a major issue for debate, public debate, whether we are in this country preparing ourselves for the challenges of the future. And those challenges are not necessarily only in terms of development, in terms of progress and prosperity. Those challenges are also in terms of building institutions. Institutions that will promote, that will support, institutions that will help in realizing that dream which we are all seeing. A dream where India emerges as a superpower, a dream in which %30 of the Indian population which is below the poverty line grows beyond the poverty line. A dream where justice is accessible, speedy. A dream where you don't have to shun courts because it takes ages, it takes decades, it takes generations to get a matter decided. We are facing that situation today. Look to the rest of the world. In America, you have 150 judges per million. And so also in other developing and developed countries, we have just about 18 per million. We have 3 crore cases today pending in different courts. And we have just about 18,000 judges to handle those cases. You have seen this result. The result is that today, even 5+0, that is a mission that we have evolved, that is a mission that we have set for ourselves, that we will not have any case in this country which is more than 5 years old. That mission, that ambition of having no case more than 5 years old is also being found to be very difficult to achieve. It's very difficult. Because there are lakhs and lakhs of cases which are today 10 years old, 15 years old, maybe 20 years old. To bring that age of a case to 5 years old is a great challenge, I would say. A great challenge. Are we ready for that? And if we are going to grapple with this challenge, on whom can we rely? Are we not looking to the younger generation who is passing out from Nalsar and other national law institutes and national law schools to join the legal profession and to join the judiciary, to help in realizing the dreams of our forefathers, that justice is accessible and justice is affordable, justice is speedy. These dreams will remain dreams, I can assure you, unless we prepare ourselves, unless we take appropriate action at this stage itself. We have the advantage which other countries do not have. We have the advantage of a very, very young population. 65% of your population in this country today is less than 35 years old. Europe and European countries are getting old. The people who are living longer and becoming less and less productive. The growth rate is zero. The population growth rate, I'm talking of the number of people who are being added to the population every year, is sometimes zero and at times minus. The countries are facing this challenge there. Ours is a much, much happier situation in the sense that we have a very large population of youth in this country which are the best of the brains. You go to America, you see in the hospitals they are Indians. You go to NASA, you see the NASA is being run by Indians. You go anywhere, the engineering, you see, field, you find Indians. You are contributing to the development of economies in other countries. Where is the question of our failing in our own country? If only we are focused. If only we have the necessary opportunity to do that. And for that, I think you will be a catalyst in creating those opportunities and creating a situation where access to justice will become a reality. There are many, many other issues on which you will find yourself grappling as you go along. Legal profession, of course, is a very, very demanding profession. It's a very demanding profession. It's not a bed of roses, as they say. It is either all bed and no roses, or all roses and no bed. This is the kind of reputation which this profession has. But I can assure you that having made this choice of being a lawyer or someone who is in the legal profession, whether as a judge, as a lawyer, you will have no regrets, because as you go along, you will realize that you had made the right choice. I remember when I was in the college, I was a science student. It was in 1966 or so, and at that time there were only two options: either become an engineer or become a doctor. So I was selected for an engineering college, a regional engineering college, and I went very happily to my father to tell him that I have been selected. So he looked at me. He was a lawyer himself. He later became a judge. He was a minister. He had a very varied career, but he looked at me. He said, "Oh, you want to become an engineer?" I said, "Yes, I want to, because everybody in my college is going to be either an engineer or a doctor." He said, "Oh, I see. तो इंजीनियर बनोगे फिर रिश्वत खाओगे, हाँ, फिर जेल जाओगे." So he dissuaded me. I was a little taken aback, but I felt he gave me a totally different view of what life can be even outside engineering and medical. And I can assure you that I had no regrets, ever. In fact, I feel if I had not shifted to law, I may have been a miserable man, as I may have retired as an executive engineer somewhere, may not have been able to do much, because you are then a part of a system which is at times corrupted by many other considerations and where you are totally helpless. But as a lawyer, you are a free thinker. As a lawyer, you are the conscience keeper of the society. You can raise your voice. And even if you join the judiciary, you go by the beats of your conscience. There's nothing that prevents you from doing justice the way you perceive it to be. Of course, discipline, judicial discipline is always something which we value, but we are not hidebound by any doctrine. If you can mold the relief according to the ends of justice that are presented in a given situation, you are free to do that. I'll be very happy to see all of you as judges, because I feel that of all the professions that humans have adopted on this face of this earth, of all the professions, and you have any number of professions anywhere in the world, go anywhere, you'll have people who are sitting on the roadside selling, you see, vegetables and fruits. You have people who are magicians. You have people who have birds who draw out some envelope and read your fortune. You see, people who take out the teeth. You have people, you see, all types of, you have snake charmers, you have fortune tellers, you have doctors, you see, you have teachers. Of all the professions, of course, some of them are very noble because they are learned professions. Teaching is a very noble, very learned profession. Medicine is a very noble profession. Yes, but I can tell you that for all these professions, if there is one profession or one job that I think stands above them all, is the job of doing divine justice. Because you are literally the deputy. There's nothing higher. There's nothing higher and more valuable or more satisfying than to be doing what God himself was supposed to do. You are his deputy on earth. And you sit there, and I don't think one can ask for anything more if one were to eventually become a judge, because you hold the balance in your hand and you go by the beats of your conscience. But then a judge's job is tapasya, and as you go higher and higher in the echelons of judicial hierarchy, it becomes more and more ghor and ghor tapasya. So if you are ready to do that tapasya, of course you will be respected and maybe worshipped, because lawyers worship judges because of their integrity, their non-partisan attitude, their sense of justice, their fairness, their hermit-like habits. That is what endears them to lawyers. That is what, you see, evokes respect for them. Believe me, whenever I meet, I am the Chief Justice of India, but when I meet some judge before whom I have practiced and whom I knew was an honest man, a courteous, very noble man, instinctively you get up and fold the hands before him. That is the kind of respect which you get or you evoke from people whom you have admired for their honesty and for their sincerity and for their nobility. Just as you do so when you meet an old teacher. You may be one day the Chief Justices of India or maybe judges of the Supreme Court, but if you meet Faizan Mustafa, you will instinctively stand up from your chair and fold hands before him because you respect him. You respect him and you have learned from him. So the compensation for a job as a judge is that you earn something for life till you live. People who have known you, people who have associated with you, people who have worked with you will hold you in the highest esteem. And what more does one look for? If those around you hold you in high esteem and respect you, I think a life is successful only when you have earned the admiration of your peers, people with whom you associate. That is what eventually one looks for. The future is in your hands. We are all slowly phasing out. I may have a few months to go. Some of our bright and young judges in the High Court may have a few years to go. But you have an entire life before you. And the future of the country, the future of the entire judicial system, the destiny of the people of this country who look to you, to the judicial system for administration of justice, is in the hands of younger people like you. I compliment you for your success. Those of you who have been lucky to win medals and awards today need special congratulations. But those of you who have not done it, believe me, life is a very, very long struggle. You can settle scores when it comes to with the gold medalist and the silver medalist, when it comes in the courts, or when it comes in some other fora where you meet them. You may cross paths, you may cross swords. So this is just the beginning of the fight. Life will present a much greater challenge and much greater opportunity for each one of you to prove that you may not have won a medal in the convocation, but you had in you to win the ultimate race, to win the ultimate war that the life is all about. Thank you very much and God bless you.